Well, to start off the show today, we're going to be talking about the economy. It's all everybody talks about. Whenever you see 2 or 3 Nigerians gathered, they're definitely talking about the economy and the way forward for Nigerians in this year that we are currently experiencing. We're going to be talking about the Oronsaye Report now. In the past week as well, Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu did say that he had ordered the implementation of the Oronsaye Report, a report that has been sort of been with us for about 12 years now, with several presidents since then, also ordering the same thing. We're going to be talking about, what this could do with regards to saving costs, reducing the cost of governance, and most importantly, if it is possible to actually implement this report. So I'm joined now virtually by the Chairman Guild of Public Affairs Analysts of Nigeria, Dr. Ambrose Iboke. You're welcome, sir. How are you doing?
Nice to be on the show.
Thanks for joining us. Now, a lot of people, have talked about, the implications of this Oronsaye report, but it still seems quite tough to implement. We've had Mr. President Goodluck Jonathan in the past and President Buhari as well in the past give the same order without yielding any fruits. Here we are again, and we've heard from members of the National Assembly even saying that this report is now outdated because the number of agencies at the time have even expanded a lot more. So what's the criteria to be used now to do this? How possible is it for this government to walk this through?
First of all, I don't align with those who say that it has outdated. It's not outdated. Though it has some time have passed since the report was submitted in 2012, that is 12 years on. But the essence of that report is still very, very, very relevant today. The ministries are still there, even though they are ballooned. What we can do is that those ministries, for example, when you say the Ministry of Petroleum, we know what constituted the Minister of Petroleum in 2012. And we know the splinter ministries that have come out from the Ministry of Petroleum, like Ministry of Gas and some other ministries that have come out from there. We also talk of other ministries like the new blue economy that was created. We know where it came out from. So there's no any kind of distortion so far. The report is clear. We had over 540 agencies, and it recommended that out of these, over 260 were statutory, and those 260, over 260 should be reduced to 161. So it is still germane in what we have today. They recommended that some agencies should be scrapped, some should be merged, some should be reverted to their parent ministries. What has happened to us as Nigeria is when we go back to, for example, the Dodgy report that was in the 70s, it was a report that was meant to streamline what the ministries were doing at that time, and also to find out some solutions. The number of what they called federal commissioners that time were very few. I don't think there were very few of them. But today they are ballooned. Federal commissioners that time are now what we call ministers, federal ministers. I remember that our past president, Muhammadu Buhari, was the federal commissioner for petroleum in the late mid-70s to late 70s. It was handed over to the civilians in 1979. So what we now have was that we enshrined ways in our constitution where we said that in the name of federal character, that every state of the country must be represented in the Federal Executive Council. That is understandable, knowing what has happened, especially in the past, immediate past government and the current government, when nepotism and the ethnic sentiments are now parameters for employing heads of agencies and the rest. What the Constitution tried to do is to protect the other people who may not be, whose ethnic bloc may not be those who are ruling. But again, it does not say that we must create several ministries to accommodate these people. For example, there's the junior minister for state, and there's the substantive minister who is the overall minister. What prevents, if we want to cut costs, what we can do is instead of creating several ministries to accommodate 36 states, plus the person from Abuja, making it 37, plus other political considerations. Now we have 48 ministers. It's uncalled for. We can still do what the Constitution says by having 36 ministers, and we can as well have just 18 ministries. Nothing prevents us from having that. Other ministers become junior ministers. There's nothing preventing us from doing that. Give them portfolios that they can manage under the ministry. There are departments, there are parastatals, there are agencies in every ministry. So you can do a kind of aggregation of some ministries from some of these parastatals and departments and give to one general minister to handle while the other one handle. So in this way, we can actually cut down the cost and implement the Oronsaye Report. So the Oronsaye Report is implementable. And what the 12 weeks window for this committee should be to look into all those ministries that and departments and agencies that were not contained in the report and try to add them up and come out with a better blueprint.
Okay, I'll come back to you now. We also have on virtually Jonathan Ikulu, who's a strategy consultant, and I wanted to just get to him very quickly because I know you've heard what Dr. Ambrose Ibuke has said, but there are a few things that jump out for people who are watching. We hear from the report that there will be no job losses, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to people. How do you cut down all of these agencies and even scrap some of them and say there won't be job losses? What then? How then are you saving costs? And it doesn't make a lot of sense to a lot of people. And secondly, some of the agencies that were recommended for scrapping seem like agencies that Nigerians need. So what then happens to them? We're talking about places like NAPEP, the Poverty Eradication Program, Public Complaints Commission, and the like. What are your thoughts on how this would work?
All right, many thanks. So I think I'll continue to the line expressed by Dr. Ambrose. I think fundamentally the point really is that the whole committee, in terms of the theme of the work, really is around one, cost of governance, and I think another broad theme is really around having a very productive public service or civil service, as used to be one of the nomenclatures that was used, right? So becoming very productive and also reducing the cost of governance. If you think about the point you've made around job losses. So they've made a very strong category statement. The Minister of Information has said that there would be no fear around job loss and that wouldn't happen. So we can take that, on the surface level. But I think the point is, if we run a very productive sort of workforce, right, what we expect to then see would then be that it then translates to, the economy and just having a productive economy. So we will cut costs. I would like to get into conversations around are we seeing feasible things that speaks to whether this cost cutting, because there have been views expressed by several quarters as to, what does cost cutting mean when we can see a couple of things that the presidency is currently still doing, right? Even looking at some of the trips that he's making and the associated personnel in those trips, right? So we can speak to that. But I think that the point around job loss, there's been a verbal statement that has said that there'll be no job loss, but I would like to stretch it to say not just should we be focused on preserving jobs, but let's also ensure that everyone is productive. So that's the point that I'll make largely around what you've asked me.
And I mean, depending on who's counting, I think we've heard things around the ranks of there's 1,316 agencies now and parastatals of government, 929 MDAs currently in the budgets. These are humongous numbers, and we've already seen what Labour tried to do last week. They are probably going to come in to have their say in all of this. How long does an implementation of something like this look like? Also considering the fact that the National Assembly is going to be involved in this, because some of these things will need constitutional reforms or at least some sort of legal drafting of something, to make it lawful. This looks like a very long process and tedious one, isn't it?
I agree with you. Also, I strongly agree with the point you've made around there could also be some need for some legal interventions, especially around enactment of some laws. It would interest you if you get to see a detailed analysis of that report, that you actually have, some of the agencies, because that report was really looking at, parastatals, agencies, and then committees. It will interest you to know that some of these commissions or agencies do not even have any sort of legal backing associated with them. Some of them don't even have like a ministry that you can sort of tie them to, which is one of the shortcomings that this implementation should really be addressing. So it looks long. If you also add, in addition to the 12 weeks, if you also add that I was reading that the House has set up a committee as well, a 23-man committee, saying that, look, we shouldn't be so hasty around going to implement this report yet. The point we're making on it being dated, a lot of current realities has also been thrown up as well too, right? The expansion of the number of agencies that requires rationalization. These are some of the things that are coming to the fore. So if I add that, that also speaks to the time it will take. But even by by design, the way this report in itself was designed, ab initio, even from the report we had in 2012, was that there will be some quick wins, there will be some medium-term wins, and there will be some longer-term wins. So I don't see it as a report. In fact, there's another argument that why this is happening on the federal government side. To really feel the effect around the country, we've got to see some sort of these things happening at the state level and at the local government level. So we should also have like a reduction of cost of governance, not just even at the federal government alone, but it should also be happening at the state and at the local government, right? So if you ask me for implementation plan, I think that broadly, especially with the enactment of some of these laws and giving it legal backings, it will take time. But clearly, the plan it would always be, and I believe that the plan would always be that there will be quick, short-term wins. I think the special advisor on policy, Adiza, was speaking, and she was already making very categorical statement of some of the agencies and commissions that would already start getting harmonized already from day one. So there are short-term wins, and so if you speak to implementation time, we'll see some that can easily start to happen immediately, right? If you go back to even the origin of this report and some of the white papers that came out of it, there were some that the government even had said, look, we agree to it happening already immediately, while there was some back and forth, right? But if I take the position of what I'm seeing with the House of Rep, I think that in terms of the full implementation, it looks longer because they're also a part and parcel of the process of getting this to have a legal backing. But there are some points just to add.
Let me go back to Dr. Ambrose Igboke now, and I think the question I just want to ask is this. I mean, we've had two former presidents who have given this order and it never came to light. Now we have a third president doing the exact same thing. So there must be a reason why it hasn't worked in the past. What has stopped this report from being implemented for 12 years now, and what will make it work this time? Dr. Ambrose, can you hear me?
He's muted.
Dr. Ambrose Igboke, I think you're muted. Can you hear me?
I can hear. Okay, you muted me, but I've unmuted myself now.
Okay, just to ask the question again. You heard the question.
Yes,
okay, go ahead.
I heard you. So I said the straight answer to your question is lack of political will. Over the years, because the three governments you have led, the person who commissioned it, which is the Goodluck Jonathan government, lacked a political will to implement it. The other regime of Buhari set up a committee to review and make its recommendation also, presented a white paper, it didn't implement. Last year, we had the same thing. So what we are having is lack of political will to implement it. This is because what has happened over the years was also a creation of those who want to implement it. They also created, like Buhari was reviewing the Oronsaye Report, and at the same time was creating more departments, like for the Minister of Disaster and all this management, something was created. This one that they are probing with huge, humongous withdrawals of 44 billion. That was when it was created. So you are trying to solve a problem. We are complicating it at the same time. And what has happened in the past was that we had several agencies doing the same work. Okay, for example, let's take an EFCC. We have the NFIU in the Nigerian police system. We have the EFCC. We have the ICPC. What work are they doing? Basically, they are going around this. We have the Code of Conduct Bureau doing the same work. So what they are trying to do, can we now have a conversance of this thing, aggregate them together, and let them do the work? So instead of, if a particular agency is not working well, we create another one. That's what we have been doing. We are just recreating, replicating agencies because one was not doing well. Instead of going to the fundamental root of the problem to see how we can, work, to make sure that our systems work well. And that has been a problem. So if the Tinubu administration is now saying we want to walk the talk, they should start perhaps from political appointees, because the president, for example, has a special advisor on digital media, has a special advisor on social media. You have special advisor on ICT, you have a special technology. So there are just nomenclatures being changed to, for job for the boys. So I think what we should start doing now is try to now say, apart from the civil service, which we are focusing on, my colleague there has mentioned even the local government and state government, we should also look at political appointments, because those are the ways where public funds are being frittered away, where one political appointee will have 45 to 50 assistants. Doing what? Only on media, you may have like 5 people or 6 people on media. This one will be social media, this one will be digital media, this one will be mainstream media, this one will be, these are just drop for the board. This is not how to run a country. So we must be able to be proactive, stamp our feet on the ground and say, okay, which of the papers are we even implementing? The federal government should even make it clear. Are we implementing the original Oronsaye report? Or are we implementing the reviewed report? That, the outcome of the white paper, 2 white papers that have been done. So the government should be very clear, which one are we even implementing? So that Nigerians can know whether it's the white paper or it is the original report that was submitted in 2012. That will help us have a clearer understanding. But as we said, there are, in fact, only 200 out of 500 and over 540, only 260 something of 64 of them are actually statutory. That means the other ones are just, what you create for administrative flexibility, and convenience. So those things should go. First of all, we should not map it out. Then in case of, I don't agree with the minister, and I don't even believe the minister. There's going to be job loss. There are going to be job losses. And the job losses are going to be massive. Because you cannot explain to me, there's no economics that explains the fact that you are downsizing, you are collapsing ministries, you are scrapping some, you are moving, and then you say there's not going to be job losses. The essence of even doing that exercise is to pull down the cost of running these agencies. And part of the cost are salaries, emoluments, and other things. So it is double speak to say that you are pulling down, you are scrapping some, you are merging, and then there's not going to be job losses. I think what the federal government should start doing now is start concentrating on the part of engaging labor. NLC, the TUC, all the senior service, senior unions and the rest, to find out how to work out modalities of those who will be affected. So that before they are even asked to go, their emoluments are ready, their gratuity, their pension, all the contributing pensions they have had and all those things are ready. So that even before they're asked to leave, they are already having their package, their pay package. In that way, it will, act as a shock absorber to, whatever pains that may, that may affect those people in this hard condition. But we must take some serious measures. And if we don't, then we can keep dancing around our problem and playing the ostrich. So the government should walk the talk by having the political will, not just to make the announcements and set up committees, but to actually implement this. But this should be done with human face. And the human face I mean is to ensure that all the entitlements of those who are going to be disengaged are ready and paid immediately.
Let me quickly just get a final word now from Jonathan. I just want to ask, what role does cutting down sort of allowances and emoluments of public servants, what role does that play in all of this? Because it's one thing to say you want to downsize government while you're still buying all of these brand new SUVs and, allocating billions to the top whatever percent of government. Do you think that also needs to be done?
Yeah, I mean, it has to be holistic. My colleague has made the point around, the government also walking the talk. I align with that. So even from the presidency as well, too, we should say pruning down of many of these political appointments. I think, too, that the bigger conversation, which we have all alluded, all of us here, is around the cost of governance. And there are things like, for example, really having another relook at whether some of the institutions that we have, should they be run on part-time or full-time basis, right? Should we have a unicameral legislature, a bicameral legislature? I think this is really the broader conversations around looking at the cost of governance, right? So, but there is no way we can excuse, political appointments, also excuse, the makeup as it currently is. I think that even the point on the ministry in itself, this is the highest we've had, right, at 48. I think that in itself is something. So, if the president leads the talk by actually demonstrating some of these things with the prone down, right now you can say we have 47 ministries and nothing has happened with one being suspended, right? So if we can do a lot that starts from those in the front line, and I'm speaking to the president and the governors, right? So if they can start a lot with their own personal appointments and seeing how they can bring that to its barest minimum, I think that the signal that it then gives to everyone is that, look, the government is really looking at this, right? But I would also add that we pull down cost of governance, but let's also speak to productivity as well too, right? Let's also be able to have a way to ensure that, you know, people do what they are elected to do, people do what they are appointed to do, people do what they are paid for. I think that that's a conversation too that should not be lost, the productivity conversation as well. Thank you.
Final word now from Dr. Ambrose. You don't sound very confident that his government will be able to pull this off. Am I right or wrong in saying that?
No, I'm
very
hopeful.
Quickly, please. We're almost out of time.
I'm very hopeful that the government will do what it said it will do, and that this is not a political talk shop as usual. And when it is done, it is better for Nigeria, so that we can start pulling down the cost and actually know where the rain started beating us. If this is implemented, perhaps we can be sure on the road for pragmatic changes for a better way to run our economy.
All right, thank you very much to our guests, and hopefully this gets done. A lot of us are watching this space and hoping that third time will be the charm for the implementation of this very, very famous or sometimes infamous report. We're going to take a break now. I'll be right back. Please stay with us.